We are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the live chat for Wednesday, August 27th, 2025. Look, I gotta be honest, not a lot going on in the weather world today. We don't have much in the way of any type of tropical systems. We're keeping an eye on the Mets Phillies game, of course. The Mets are in the lead 3-0 with McLean, sorry, dominating, which is pretty interesting because he'd be the first rookie pitcher to, if he wins this game, wins three in a row for the Mets ever. So that's pretty interesting. How's the mic sounding? I'm not going live on Twitter. Huh. What do you know? Well, it looks like we won't be live on X for tonight, but I'm not sure why either. It happens sometimes. But we'll plow on through. What are we going to do? You know what I'll do? I will share the link on X so that way people know. There we go. We're going to take care of this right now. And then we're going to talk about everything going on in the tropics. Uh, Issues with X. Okay, watch live chat on YouTube. Bam. That way, people on X want to watch and they're waiting for it. Well, now you can go right to YouTube. Anyway, so we have some details, some thoughts on the tropical Atlantic. Again, thus far for this summer, a lot of the thoughts I had for this summer worked out pretty well. We had some heat waves, but really they were in that 85 to 95 range. We had a few occasions where we touched 100 degrees, but the primary story was the humidity, the southwesterly flow, the Western Atlantic Ridge, so on and so forth. So that was something that we experienced quite a bit. We had some bouts of rain, some dry periods, certainly more drought than rain. But when it rained a lot and produced flash flooding. But now we head towards the end of summer, and it's going to end on a cool note. So I'm going to talk about what is influencing our weather pattern now and what to expect as we move forward and touch on fall. But I do want to make it very clear what's happening now is not necessarily an indication of what you could expect for the winter. A lot of people like to jump to conclusions like, oh, we're seeing too many cold fronts now. That means we won't see enough in the winter. Weather patterns don't work like that. However, there are some clues that are showing up that definitely have my attention. So we'll talk about that tonight. As always, I'll answer all the questions that show up here on the live chat in the premium section. By the way, the live chat room, I've decided instead of getting emails from premium members, I'm just opening up the live chat all the time. I'll always have it up. So if you're a premium member and you have a question, it's probably faster to go there and drop your question in there than to drop me an email. It's just a faster process. So definitely check that out if you're interested and you have a question. So let's pull up the tropical Atlantic. And what's really caught my eye this year with the tropical Atlantic is that for all the talk about developing La Nina, it really hasn't unfolded like that. We've had a couple of tropical storms, one hurricane. We should see an uptick in activity by the time we get to mid-September. I mean, after all, that is during the heart of the hurricane season. But at the very climatological peak, it's going to be very, very quiet. And that's because the MJO is moving out of a favorable phase and moving into a neutral circle. The only activity out there is Ferdinand, which is, well, basically a ghost of itself, and it's going to continue to lift up to the northeast, and it's well on the way of becoming extratropical, not really a threat. Now, the reason why we're not seeing much of a wave of activity here, let me see, is the MJO phase. Is moving into what was an active period, phase 1 and 2, and somewhat 3. Now it's moving into a neutral circle, and there's potential here in the long range that it could go back into phase 1 and 2 for a short period of time. But I'm not seeing any robust signal out of this, we're certainly not getting much of a La Nina signal. Now, the way that we study La Nina, at least the way I study La Nina, is not just the sea surface temperatures, but also what's going on with the response in the atmosphere, the SOI. This worked out great for me last winter when everyone was jumping the gun on the ENSO state, and I continued to just keep an eye on the SOI, and that gave me a pretty good idea of what to expect as we move on through the season. Thus far, we have been going from slightly positive to neutral, and that's been the theme for much of the summer, which really supports more like a cold neutral take to the atmosphere in terms of tropical influences. You have a stronger influence from the MJO state, but not really anything that stands out as really driving the weather pattern. So our tropical influences here are, well, pretty weak. When we take a look at the El Nino Southern Oscillation influences, I want to first go up to where our sea surface temperatures are now. And a lot of focus here on 3.4. We're at minus 0.4 degrees Celsius. In order to be considered La Nina like, you need to be minus 0.5 or lower. So we're right on the threshold here. But why am I not impressed with this situation? Well, let's go back down to the subsurface. Scroll right down here. Okay, so when we had our La Nina rocking and rolling, we had this show up. Pretty impressive, right? Certainly a lot colder than minus 0.4 in the subsurface. Pretty chilly. The reason why this is important to me is that this is our source region, okay? Then we went positive, so we got kind of a relaxation. Again, not strong enough to be an El Nino, but slightly warm neutral. And now we're seeing this feature here. Notice we are at, well, we just touched minus 0.4. We've moderated since, so around minus 0.3. This is a cold neutral signal, not a La Nina signal. So let's think about this here. We have the SOI, which is generally neutral. We have the subsurface, which is somewhat cool. I wouldn't call this cold. It's nothing like this. And when we look at the evolution of this warm pool, and let's see if we can zoom in on the current state. Sometimes this can be a little sensitive. So there we go. Okay, so there's our cold pool. Now, this cold pool was produced by what we call a Kelvin wave. Kelvin waves can do a lot of funky things to sea surface temperatures. It can enhance and weaken ENSO states. In this case, it enhanced the cold pool, and that has been a lingering issue. But notice all this warm water building in the subsurface. So this cold pool is roughly 50 to 150 meters in depth. Let's go 50 to 125 meters. Okay, split hairs there. So not very impressive. Okay, and as this rises up to the surface, it's going to moderate. So what I'm seeing right now is a lot of data that points to not a true La Nina state as we head towards fall. We're pretty much done with summer. We got a couple of days and we're done with meteorological summer, and we move into meteorological fall. So I'm not seeing a lot of strong signals here. So what is driving our weather pattern? Well, I've been bringing this up quite a bit to all you premium members. You know about this. I've been talking about this quite a bit in the live chats as well. Our QBOs in easterly phase. This is a very important signal for me. Okay, this gives me the stratospheric environment and what's possible. So, what is possible in an easterly QBO? Higher potential for stratospheric warming, higher potential for a slower polar jet stream, and so a little bit better potential for high latitude blocking. So, you have a more favorable high latitude blocking regime, and you end up with the ability to sustain high latitude blocking regimes and polar jet stream configurations. So we take that and then we look at what's been evolving here in the stratosphere. And this feature has been here all summer. And that feature right there is exactly what has been driving our negative EPO pattern. Okay. So as long as this signal is in place, you end up with a nice deep trough around the Aleutians, a ridge over Alaska and around Western Canada, and a deep trough over the eastern two-thirds of the United States. For much of the summer, this trough has been in what we call a positive tilt orientation, which means that it runs up against the Western Atlantic ridge and you get that southwesterly flow. So when you consider the wavelength orientation, this would support what? A humid summer for the East Coast. Why? Because you get a persistent south-southwesterly wind pattern from the Gulf right up into New England, and you get your Western Atlantic ridge, which is built up nicely, and you also start to get these signals of brief negative NAOs. All right, they pop in and pop out, right? Because it's not strongly supported yet because we're in the warm season. Now that we're moving into the cold season, notice we're getting more and more support for that warm stratospheric environment to take place over the northern Atlantic, which is a suggestion of the potential for more sustained, longer negative NAO patterns. They'll still break down and waver from time to time, but the overall theme is a continued negative NAO pattern here. And a Western Atlantic ridge that's going to start to slowly give way as we move through the season, through fall. So, what we should see in this configuration with this type of influence, if this remains sustained, is that our trough axis starts shifting more and more towards the Tennessee River Valley and starts to produce more of a neutral to negative tilt as our polar jet gets stronger and you drive more mass into the base of the trough over the eastern United States. So that's why when we're dealing with this type of pattern in this warm season, you don't have as much mass being driven into the backside of the trough. So the trough could take on more of a positive tilt orientation because everything's moving very quickly. But when we get towards the cold season, you're driving more mass into the backside of the trough because the polar jet stream is more amplified because we have stronger thermal gradients, which leads to more negative tilted troughs. So that's the background environment that we're in. And as we go through the fall, one of the key factors is not so much the tropical influence. Everyone's going to be paying attention to the state of Enso, but really that's not what's going to be important here. What's going to be important here, what I'm going to be watching, is what's going to be driving this feature. And we're going to go back to our old friend, the EP flux, okay, to see where that transport of heat is in the atmosphere from the troposphere to the stratosphere as we move forward over the next couple of weeks. This is why I am not jumping the gun, even though I've heard references about 2014-15, 95-96, 94-95. I'm not jumping the gun at any of those references because we have to have a better understanding of the driving mechanisms of this weather pattern. We still have to study the tropical influences as well. And I want to get a better read of the atmospheric angular momentum, the snow growth in Siberia, and also the state of the sea ice this fall. These are all important factors, which is why it's really irresponsible to start making proclamations about the winter until we get those observations locked in, which is why I always wait towards October 20th to issue the winter forecast. The only time I didn't do October 20th was when we were getting married, and I didn't think it was responsible to wait till the last minute, so I did it earlier. So with that being the case, not a lot going on right now around our neck of the woods. We have a few troughs moving through, but just a few isolated showers over the region. Nothing really big. It's been a very quiet time period. When we take a look at the 250 millibar winds here, our polar jet stream, very interesting configuration here. We have a broad ridge. Here's our trough with our negative EPO. Nice broad ridge dropping into a nice deep trough over the Great Lakes in the eastern United States. The subtropical jet stream's active with a nice trough along California, a ridge over Texas, nice trough here positioned off the East Coast here. So we don't have very good interaction between the subtropical and polar jet stream right now, which is one of the reasons why I've been a bit skeptical of any type of major storm for next week, which we'll touch on in just a moment. We also have this interesting configuration here. We have two high pressure centers, a weakness between them, and then the broader ridge over it. Basically setting up a very convoluted pattern over the western United States. But the overall theme for us is that, hey, our air mass source is coming from here. In fact, let's take a look at 850 millibars and take a look at this. Our air mass source is coming right from the Hudson Bay, northern Hudson Bay, down through Canada, and right into our neck of the woods after moving over the Great Lakes. That is some real nice polar air that is filtering into the region. So let me pull this up. And then, so here we have our water vapor satellite picture. Shortwave after shortwave is moving through. That's what's keeping us with the isolated shower threat. For tomorrow, we're going to get a little bit of a break. Low shortwave ridge is going to keep us nice and quiet. Then our next cold front, which is associated with this trough right here, is going to swing on through, open up the potential for a few scattered showers. No thunderstorm threat here. You're talking about Cape values around 500 joules per kilogram. Nothing severe, nothing all that impressive. Just a few passing showers. In fact, by the evening, if you have any outdoor plans on Friday evening, I wouldn't cancel them. I wouldn't worry about them too much. Just have an umbrella handy for, let's say, about noon to about 6 p.m. So here's our 500 millibar pattern. And as we move into the Labor Day weekend, you basically have a trough axis sitting right over us at 500 millibars, which basically means a lot of subsidence. You have a lot of air converging into the base of the trough. So as a result, it's going to be very quiet this weekend. Very quiet. But what about this coastal storm potential? Well, let me jump back to zero Z's guidance, okay? And pull that up. Hopefully it loads pretty quickly. We'll see. Here we are. Okay, so we jump all the way to Tuesday afternoon. And we have this shortwave right here. And notice there's a little bit more mass building in the back end of this and starting to force us into a negative tilt. So the way that this whole thing sets up is that the polar jet stream and the subtropical jet stream have to interact just right. And the way that the whole pattern's evolving, you can't rule it out. I can't say it definitely can't happen. What I can say is that the timing of this shortwave needs to be just right to pull this off. Otherwise, you're just going to miss to the east. So I moved the wording this afternoon to just periods of showers for right now and then see how the data works out over the next 48 hours. But when we take a look at the new data from 12Z, it basically shows what happens when we don't have that interaction. So this trough lifts out. And then here we are on Monday. Here we are on Tuesday night. Here's our same short wave, not as strong of a polar shortwave interaction. And so this just heads right out into the Atlantic and they remain separate. And so as a result, you end up with practically nothing. I'm leaning more towards a passing shower and that's about it, rather than a true coastal storm at this point. Because in order to have the true coastal storm to really show up in this weather pattern, you need to have perfect interaction. Thread the needle. We're not there yet with our high latitude blocking. We're not there yet with just the seasonal pattern. But it is interesting to see this potential even showing up. So let's just say it might be a warning sign for the future, but there's a lot to work out here. I just don't like the wavelength and the evolution here that's playing out. So over the next 90 hours, again, when we move to Friday, there's our cold front with a few pesky showers. And, let me just show you the Cape values here. Here we are. And again, not really all that impressive for Friday. I mean, it's pretty much focused off the coast. It's very weak. You're below 500 joules per kilogram. I'm not seeing anything that would really stand out to me as anything significant. Just a few passing showers, and that is about it. And then for this weekend, it is going to be beautiful. So if you have any plans for the Labor Day weekend, hey, this is going to be great. There isn't going to be any issues at all. And then there's our low pressure system out over the Atlantic, which I think is a little bit more reasonable. I'm keeping the scattered showers in the forecast for now, but I wouldn't be surprised if I back off on that as we move forward over the next couple of days. So that's pretty much what I have in place. Again, not a lot to talk about right now, because you could say I'm kind of saving my voice for when we really start to see action really pick up. So I will answer all the questions that we have here in the live chat first, and then we'll go over to YouTube and see what's showing up over there, and then we'll see where we are in terms of time, and then we'll go from there. Okay. So let's see here. Let's see. Notice this is from Card Shark. Excuse me. Notice the 70 millibar stratospheric temperatures have really warmed up in eastern Canada per Earth News School. Yeah, there has been a pretty significant growth in the warming of the stratosphere. That part of that again is part of that easterly QBO influence. The solar activity remains strong, but the sunspots really have been quiet in terms of producing solar flares. So I'm not seeing a strong solar connection right now. But what I am seeing is, and why I'm curious to see what the EP Flex is going to start to evolve into as we move into the true cold season, is this influence from the stratospheric QBO driving this warm pool in the northern Pacific. I think that's going to continue to be a theme, and if that is going to be a continued theme, we're going to be very busy with a negative EPO pattern. I think. Wait, Seaver, Ryan, etc. never won 3 games in a row. No, they were good. They got no decisions. They didn't get losses, but they got no decisions. They didn't get wins. So he would be the first to get 3 wins. Gooden never won 3 in a row as a rookie. Not the first 3. He certainly won 3 in a row, but not his first 3. What part of Enzo is warm below the surface? Nino 4 and Nino 1 plus 2. The cold areas is Nino 3 and Nino 3.4. Look at those 700 millibar temperatures, cold air converging, increasing fast. So let's take a look. Let's pull up the Earth New School. Let me try to get the data up before I show it, because I'd be tough if I couldn't do that. Let's see here. So our millibars, temperatures, and let's see. Yeah, that's a pretty impressive air mass. Let's look at 850 millibars. That's growing at a pretty good rate too. That's not too bad. So 700, the mid levels are starting to definitely get colder, which you would expect. But this is a pretty nice patch of cold air here, really starting to take shape over the Arctic, which you would expect for this time of year. But certainly, we're seeing that evolution starting to take shape. And it'll be interesting to see the evolution of the polar vortex, if it remains weak, and how that all takes shape as we move forward. Let's see here. Dew points in the 40s and 50s has been awesome, much better than the 60s and 70s. Yeah, I would agree. I am loving this. I wish I could take this all summer, but I know we have to deal with what we got to deal with first. I know that is a bit far out for you. My niece is getting married. Congratulations. This is from Bill. Married outside late in the afternoon in Burlington County on September 6th. Do you have a preliminary thoughts on that? Right now, I don't see any major storms. It's too far out whether you could expect showers or whatnot. That really comes down to timing. But overall, it's a quiet weather pattern averaging below normal. Temperatures are going to be pretty close to near normal. So let's say like upper 70s to mid 80s. Um, but the good news, I don't see any major storms. Definitely drop me a line, Bill, next week after Labor Day, and I'll be able to provide a bit more details on that. That's for sure. But overall, it doesn't look like there's anything too significant. Let's see. Checking out YouTube. Could you see water restrictions in effect soon for New York? Well, we'll do New York and New Jersey. Um, I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised if we see water restrictions starting to show up for the fall. I don't see any major rainfall patterns or major heavy rainfall patterns. Now, of course, a wild card is always um, tropical systems, but right now, I don't see any type of significant major rainfall events or anything of that nature. Let's see here. Do we have any questions on Facebook? That is true. That is true. Well, definitely it is definitely beautiful. Mets just scored another run. They were up 4-0. Man, oh man, the Phillies cannot play well at Citi Field, which is weird to me. The Phillies at Citi Field is like the Mets in Atlanta. It's just I'm just not used to seeing that. That's crazy. But yeah, I mean the weather has been absolutely. I love walking outside. It's so refreshing. I walk out right after I get done forecasting for the morning and just walk around and just enjoy the low humidity. It is wonderful out, and I will take it every time. Even the 18Z GFS not able to spin up a tropical storm or hurricane right now. That's a great sign. I'll take it every time. Um, I don't see. Look, I really see. This is why I'm skeptical of any type of significant La Nina influence. I would expect to see a major uptick in tropical activity. Now, as far as the ACE score is concerned, we're running a little bit above normal. But if we end up with this dry period in the middle of the hurricane season, I would not be surprised if the ACE score starts running below normal once we get to next week because there's just not much out there. Now, there is a hint that we could see a little bit of peak, a little bump in activity for the middle of the month, but I'm just not in, I, enthusiastic isn't the right word. I'm not bullish on significant uptick in activity. I do expect some activity because if not, then wow, we end up with a below normal season rather than even near normal. While some people are going above normal, um, but I don't see the indications of any type of strong uh, support for a active uptick with numerous hurricanes or anything of that nature. And again, you never want to let your guard down because all you need is one. But really, over the next 15 days, I don't really see much of anything, to be honest with you. I really don't, you know? Um, Certainly no threat to the eastern United States. Maybe we'll get something pop up around the Caribbean, but nothing that's showing up in any of the guidance, even the ensemble guidance or the AI guidance, if you want to look at that, uh, of any threat on the eastern United States, which I will gladly celebrate and I'm very thankful for. I gotta say, I don't understand some of these people running around getting upset. First of all, some people are blaming it on a harp, which is ridiculous. But there are literally people upset because they can't drive their viewership because we don't have hurricanes. What's wrong with you, dude? I mean, I don't get it. I really don't get those type of people. I really don't. Especially if anyone ever lived through Sandy. I mean, I never want to experience that again. If we miss every hurricane from here on out for the rest of my life, I will take it. Because that experience with Sandy, well, that's why we got a generator here, to be honest with you. Because that was a rough experience. You know what I mean? Yep. Let's see here. We'll see if we have any more questions in social media land. Haven't used my snowblower in 2 years, sitting in the garage collecting dust. You know, patient another person patiently waiting for winter to break the snow drought we've been experiencing in coastal New Jersey. Here's the thing. There are some decades where it just won't snow no matter what you do. Um, this could be an interesting year. You have a near neutral Ensono state. You have a negative QBO. Um, you have some signs of stratospheric warming set up. So there's definitely something that could be brewing here. But I don't want to jump the gun because I know that there are people picking up on some signals here, and just pure scientifically, yeah, there are some interesting signals showing up, especially if you get a sustained negative EPO pattern. But I really, based on the experiences we've had the past couple of years, I don't want to sell you fool's gold and then tell you like, oh, it's going to be a crazy winter, and it's not, because it's not fair to you. It's not fair to me because then I get stressed. I don't need that. Um, there are interesting signals, but it's too early to jump the gun on making any declarative statements. Is that fair? There are things that we definitely have to watch. I'm keeping an eye on that stratospheric warm pool. But I really don't want to be the person running around waving like, "Oh, it's going to be a great winter," blah blah blah, and then one thing throws it off. Maybe the snowfall doesn't build up like expected in Siberia, or maybe I'm wrong about La Nina and it takes on a stronger influence than I thought, and then I'd be sitting there like a dumbass saying like, "Oh, we're not going to see La Nina," and there it is popping at like minus 0.8 or something, and I really look like an idiot, right? So I don't want to do that to myself. Wow, he's through 6 innings. McLean's through 6 innings and dominating. Wow, I think we might have someone there. I totally agree that it's way too early to make a call. So much can change. Yeah, I just don't want to jump the gun. My mom was telling me about the Poconos when Hurricane Connie and Diana hit back to back. Yeah, that wouldn't be fun. I remember my first experience with tropical systems. It was Gloria. That was it. It just glanced us, but I was so curious to see the influences of it. Um, that was something. Let's see, what other questions do we have? And I totally agree. No, that is about it. Okay, so it is a quiet night, which I kind of expected. Look, this is when people say, because okay, people ask me like, "Oh, do you go away on vacation?" And I'm like, "No. First of all, we don't. We're kind of homebodies here, so we have a house. We want to stay in it. You know what I mean?" But when I think of vacation, vacation revolves around when we have beautiful weather like this. Like I get my forecasting done, and I got the rest of the day to myself. And nights like this, where there just isn't a lot to talk about, I'm probably going to cut this short early because I answered all your questions. There's not much going on. How many times can I say, "Hey, high pressure's in control"? Unless you guys want to hear my analysis on baseball, and, and I don't know how many of you would enjoy that. But this is one of those weeks where it is very comfortable and very nice and a good break for me to just kind of rest up and charge up my batteries for hopefully what is an active season. And look, if I was, and this is something that part of being a certified digital meteorologist, and I take my seal seriously. And next year, I'm going to be the chairman of that board for the AMS. And by the way, I'm going to the AMS meeting. Any of you young meteorologists out there who might be um, going, I'm actually going to be going to that for the first time ever. The national meeting, the annual meeting. I've never been to it, so I am just very, very excited about this. Uh, I take this very seriously. And while it would probably make me a lot more money if I was to put out advertisement and hype up the winter and all that stuff, I just wouldn't feel right about it. You know, NFL forecast next week. I'm actually going to be making a separate video for the NFL games. Probably I'll probably do it every Wednesday morning or Wednesday afternoon, like around 10, 11 a.m. Um, and put out like an NFL forecast and go over the different games and the weather impacts, maybe give my picks. I'm thinking about it. I'm not sure how to set up. The one thing I gotta check, if I have the NFL page up, am I gonna get striked against? I don't think I will. Just with the schedule, and I give my idea on the forecast. So I'm thinking about starting to pull that off starting next Wednesday in midday, and then I'll probably set up a separate location for that, or I'll base it definitely on the YouTube channel, but then I'll have a separate location just for the video, maybe within the sports page I have. I'll embed the video there so you could take a look at my picks and the forecast. So sunny skies and the Chiefs. No, I'm not going to talk about any engagements, by the way. All I gotta say about that is that, hey, look, just don't mess with my team. Do whatever you gotta do in the off season, you know. But that's pretty much it. So we're gonna call it a night. So because we don't have much in the way of any more questions. Hold it. Totally. Do you have utility service contracts that you consult for? Um, I have some. um who I do work for. It kind of depends on, I can't get into too much detail because they're clients and NDAs and all that stuff. But the short answer is yes. Whispers go Phillies. Yeah, look, the Phillies and Mets are both going to be in the playoffs, and you never know what's going to happen in the playoffs. But this is something that is just unique to me. I've never experienced this before, where another team's coming into my home stadium, and not only can they not play well, but they're freaking out about mics and little images around the apple and all this sort of crazy stuff. So I've never seen anything like that before. So we're going to call it a night. Thank you as always. Of course, when we actually get some active weather, we'll go the full hour. But I figure, I'm just going to rest my voice for tonight and take the relaxation. It's God knows I'm going to be busy at some point this coming winter. I just don't know how much, but we'll find out. In the meantime, stay safe out there. Have a wonderful Labor Day weekend, and don't do anything too crazy. Have a good night.